Hello and welcome everyone to another special IATEFL live show. I missed you, so I'm really hoping that you're all doing well. I'm Georgia and I'm so happy that you're here with us today because this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. And of course, this session is all going to be about mental health, emotional learning, and connections. This is something that is very close to my heart, and I hope that you enjoy the show because we have got some very interesting voices coming to speak to us, not only about mental health, but emotional learning and stress. These are two elements that are very well connected. We will be looking at practical tips that you can follow in class. And of course, just take a breath, settle in, and explore these two very important topics that we can have a look at together. Of course, I am here with Nikki. Hello, Nikki.
Hello, Georgia. How are you? You're looking very summery.
Oh, thank you very much. The temperature and definitely the weather is helping here in the UK.
I have heard. Yeah, I've heard it's been absolutely amazing.
How has it been for you?
It's the same. It's been a bit cooler, but we have got the sunshine. So it makes everything better. It makes us feel better, at least. Well, at least me.
That definitely helps with mental health, doesn't it?
It does. I'm really looking forward to the show this afternoon, Georgia. I think it's such an important topic.
Absolutely. Nikki, we've talked about mental health during our live show at the Edinburgh conference.
Yeah.
Because it was a full-on experience for us. We had to interview people, we had to do recordings, we were going all over the conference. So what was one way for you to decompress and then just relax?
I'm the kind of person that I need a bit of alone time. I need to step away for a little bit and just to kind of not have anyone talk to me and to recharge my batteries. And I try and think of positive things that have happened to me, at least one positive thing that's happened during the day. And it's so nice. It's really, I don't know how to say this, but things that you would normally take for granted, you realize are actually important and help your day become really nice. Like for example, at IATEFL, you run into so many people that that, the amount of hugs that you get in one day is enough for the whole year, so it's things like that you think about and then you realize, okay, this will keep me going. So I need to step back and take some time to reflect and be on my own. What do you do? How do you digest everything?
That's a very good question. I think that I'm very much similar to you. So there are two different ways. So the first one is I do like to step back, go and enjoy the sunshine, regardless of whether there is sunshine or not. I will just step outside, take a breather, and just relax for a little bit by just thinking about nothing, just enjoying and connecting with nature. And I think that my second approach is connecting with people. For example, during the conference, we had that beautiful white sofa that was backstage. People didn't see it, but it was really nice because people were coming to visit us and watch the show live, and we connected with people. So I think that these are two ways that really help me, depending on the situation.
You see, what Georgia's not telling you is that she's a bit like J-Lo. She demands a sofa, especially white, wherever she goes. So we were given that. But no, you're right. It did make a difference actually to have people there. It felt a lot more inclusive and a lot more kind of with, your friends and people there with you enjoying the experience together. Yeah, definitely. I understand that.
Absolutely. Nikki, you have got someone very interesting coming up as well for an interview. And then I have got another interesting person as well. And today in this show, we're going to have a look at two different topics as well. So Nikki and her guest are going to be talking about emotional, social, and emotional learning, whereas my guest and I will be talking about stress and teachers. So Nikki, we will see you in a while.
See you shortly.
And thank you very much, Nikki. But now I would like to invite to the stage our one of our favorite IATEFL people, Laura. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. So, Laura, that's a similar question for you as well. How do you decompress?
Well, I heard you talking about the conference. At the conference, I was lucky enough that my hotel was quite nearby. So on my lunch break, I would literally go and lie on my bed.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Yes, we do need that kind of break, don't we?
Yeah, on my feet all day, about 20,000 steps. It was a lot.
Yeah. But Laura, of course, we're not here to talk about the conference, but we are here to talk about next year's conference. What have you got for us?
So scholarships for Brighton 2026 are open, which is very exciting. We have 23 of them this year, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about them, or I can just reel off a list of information for you.
Absolutely. So first things first, for people watching us from home, what are these scholarships? And what does it mean we have 23 of them?
Okay, so an IATEFL scholarship basically helps fund some element of your trip to the conference. So they all include the actual conference fee itself as standard, and then there are different elements that each one includes. Some of them might pay for your PCE entrance, your pre-conference event. Some of them might give you a year's membership. Others might pay specifically for accommodation or for travel, or some you might just get a bit of cash that's to go towards whatever you want it to go towards for your conference, getting you there.
Brilliant. And how can people get involved?
So the first thing you need is an IATEFL account, so you can log into your dashboard. It's free to create an account. Some of them require you to have an IATEFL membership. About half of them do. But then you've got the other half where you don't need to be a member. So you can just literally log in and click on the scholarships block and start your application.
Amazing. Now, can anyone apply for a scholarship?
Yes, pretty much. So the best thing to do is to go to the website, which is at the bottom of the screen, and look at the summary sheet. That's basically a table of all the information, so you can quickly check which ones are sort of more suitable for you. So if you're a member or not a member, if you're a first-time delegate, if you're a first-time speaker, if you need to be from a particular country or something like that, or if you need to work in a certain field. But yeah, if you have a look, there should be one or two at least that you can find that sort of fits you.
Brilliant. Now, one last question I have is, do people need to do any presentations, for example, if they win a scholarship?
Some of them you do. That's on there as well, whether you need to submit a proposal or not. So I think, what did I look at earlier? 12 of them ask for a speaker proposal, but the others don't. But say if you did apply for one that didn't need it, you could then later on submit a proposal if speaking at the conference is what you wanted to do.
Amazing. Yeah, because I had some people contacting me saying that I'm a little bit too shy to do a session at the conference, but I still want to apply for a scholarship, which is great to know that you don't necessarily need.
No, yeah, so you don't need to speak for all of them. Just check on the list.
Amazing. Laura, I've got one last question for you. So let's say that somebody applies for a scholarship. Can they apply for more than one?
Yes, you can apply for more than one. The only sort of thing is to make sure you're obviously eligible for the ones that you are applying for. And also the speaker proposal, you can only submit one proposal. You can't submit a separate one for each application. So you sort of need to make sure the ones that you're applying for are sort of aiming towards the same sort of area for the proposal, or it's sort of broad enough that it covers them all. But other than that, you can apply for more than one. I'd say quality is better than quantity, so don't just apply for all the ones you can and just not put much thought into them. yeah.
Amazing. We do have a question from the audience. So Salma is asking, can new or inspired teachers apply? And if so, how much help or assistance is available?
Yep, some of them in particular say that you are new to the field of teaching, so look out for those ones. In terms of help or assistance, if this is funds wise, you can see that on the summary sheet as well. That's the quickest way to see if accommodation is included or how much money you would get, for example. It's also important to think about if it doesn't cover the whole of your trip, maybe do a quick search online to see how much a flight would cost you and if you've got the funds to make up the difference. Yeah, and if you need any help with the application itself, you can email me and I can assist you.
Amazing. Okay, Laura, of course, that's something I want to mention as well, that during the conference, we invite scholarship winners to come and speak to us.
Yeah, that's not compulsory.
It's part of the chasing that we're doing during the conference. Now, what advice would you give to people watching from home with regards to scholarships?
Mainly, if you have to be in it to win it, as the saying goes. If you've applied before and been unsuccessful, that doesn't mean you won't get it this time. Have another try. Some people it takes 4 or 5 attempts before they finally get a scholarship. Obviously, they are improving their application each year. And just make sure your essay that you submit for your application really does what they ask for in the text.
Amazing. I think that this is very important for people to know as well. Just make sure you read the information.
Read
correctly.
the question, as the teachers would say.
Absolutely. Laura, thank you so much. By the way, what is the closing date?
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful. It is Wednesday, the 18th of June.
Amazing. So Wednesday, 18th of June, this is the deadline to submit your scholarship.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Laura, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you have a lovely day and a beautiful mental health awareness week.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, Laura. See you later.
Bye.
So for people watching us from home, do have a look on our iatefl.org/scholarship website, where you can find out more about our scholarships. And here's a very short brief to give you some more information about.
Oh, hello. I appear to be in the room on my own.
Hello, Nikki.
Hello, Georgia.
Apologies, I had a technical issue here. So, Nikki, scholarship winners.
Yep.
We interview them every year. What advice would you give to our scholarship winners?
I think number one, you've got to be in it to win it. So don't think that you can't get the scholarship, because someone's going to get it. And I think it's really worth it. Every scholarship winner that we've met at the conference has really, really, really enjoyed the experience. And whether you're a first-time speaker or whether you have a real passion for a certain area of ELT that you want to share, I mean, there are enough scholarships, to suit whatever your passion is. So I would say, don't think that you can't. Someone's going to get it, and it could be you. So go for it.
Amazing. Nikki, thank you very much. I'm going to go backstage now and invite our first guest.
Yay. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so good afternoon to anyone who's just joined us. We are very, very lucky to have Elsie Ananga. Am I saying that correctly, Elsie, your surname?
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
Brilliant. Joining us this afternoon. Elsie, thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat to us. For anyone who hasn't met you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, what you do, what your passions are?
Thank you very much, Nikki. It's a great privilege to be on this wonderful live show. And I wish to say that I am Elsie Inanga. I have been an English as a foreign language teacher for the past 19 years in Yaoundé, Cameroon, Central Africa. And I'm passionate about social emotional learning and mental health. I'm also passionate about English language teaching and continuous professional development. My journey started with an exchange visit in 2019 to the US. I had a time to meet with other educators from around the world. And that's where my passion started to talk about social emotional learning and mental health. And it will surprise you to know that it is something affecting most people, but since there are no indicators that they have uh, uh, disorders, so they may think it's all right. But each of us, we need some time to relax, some time to get back our strength, know how to relate with others so that we have a profitable encounter with those we communicate with. And the number one people I find really um, intriguing to talk with are the learners I meet on almost daily basis. And so that's where my passion really started in the domain of social emotional learning, because I realized that some of my learners didn't want to talk, didn't want to say
Uh-huh.
anything. When it's time for the lesson, they could pick up their bags and walk out of class. And sometimes it gets really hot in our context. And so I would blame several factors on this. But when I started going deeper, asking the learners what they want, how can they relate with others, how to include others in their daily activities, I realized that I had a wonderful experience. The performance itself spoke for it spoke. The children, the learners started performing better and having more interest. So it's for me a health, and that makes you to have the wealth in your education. So that's where
Oh,
I normally
absolutely.
started.
Absolutely. Elsie, in case, and also this is for me, I know the term social emotional learning, but could you break it down a bit for us or
Hmm.
for me? What exactly does that mean when
Hmm.
you talk about social emotional learning?
Thank you. Social emotional learning, for me, has a basis on one of the framework. It's a framework from the Castle model. I I study social emotional learning from the Castle model, and it is built on five major principles. And these principles are self-awareness. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be aware of your emotions. You have to be aware that you, as an individual, you have emotions in you, and you have to know how to deal with these emotions. You know how to regulate them, how to adapt in different circumstances. And then the second one of social emotional learning, according to the Castle model, is self management. How do we regulate our emotions then? You have these emotions, you are aware of them, but how do you manage them? How do you take care of them so that you don't have a breakdown, so that you don't maybe leave out others? You consider
Mm-hmm.
the environment where you are. And then another one is relational skills. How do we relate with people? And this is very important even in the classroom, because you have learners coming in from diverse backgrounds. And
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a little difficult if they are not considerate about the others, if they would think only about themselves, if they don't want to work, let's say, for example, in a group. Maybe they have barriers that hinder them from their traditions, from their customs. And when you come into a classroom, how do you live with others? So we talk about relational skills, maintaining positive relationships with others. We also talk about responsible decision making. You know, our learners, even us as human beings, as educators, we have to make rational decisions, ethical
Mm-hmm.
decisions. So when we are in the classroom, what is right? Is it good to bang on the benches? Is it good to destroy furniture? How do you, if
Mm-hmm.
you go back into the community, how do you deal with people who litter? What do you tell them? So we have all these aspects of social emotional learning from the Castle framework. It is really a pathway on how to relate with one another. And then you
Mm-hmm.
don't only relate with others, but you deal with your emotions. You check them,
Mm-hmm.
you control them, you find a way to regulate, so that you don't step the borders, you don't step the boundaries, and you can
But
live
this is
freely.
no,
Yes.
absolutely. But this isn't something that is necessarily very easy to do, is it? It doesn't necessarily
No.
come naturally to us. So is this something that you explicitly teach to the learners, or do you somehow kind of weave activities that deal with this into your lessons? How do you connect the two, the social emotional learning plus English as a foreign or second language?
Thank you. I teach social emotional learning implicitly. I use examples, we use activities to help the learners regulate their emotions, to help the learners live with one another. And for that, we have, if I just time wouldn't permit, I have my well-being board. And you pick out activities from there of your choice. The learners have the freedom to choose what aspect of their lives they want to ameliorate, what they think is lacking. And so in each lesson, sometimes, not all the lessons, but some lessons, I'll ask you, all right, look at your well-being board. What do you think from today's lesson can fit into your well-being board? If you learned about the environment, how do you regulate your environment with those of others so that we can have a better world? So we try to create activities from board games, cards. I have a new one I just made up for myself, well-being cards. And I use these cards in the classroom just as questions. I ask the learners, maybe in the warm-up exercise, okay, how are you feeling today? If we had to meet the presidents of our country, of our nation, what would you ask that would make our nation better? So those are some of the things we do in our classrooms, less practical activities. And I mostly do that as warm-ups or as rounding off activities, maybe round off activities for the day, feedback from the learners. And then they can go back home and do a project, a poster, how they feel. We have what I like to term my English vision board, where we have a wellness board. Yes, so you can see what aspects of yourself you want to ameliorate, and then stick it out on that board in some colorful paper. And at the end, we take photos, we discuss, and sometimes the learners are given the opportunity to speak for themselves. This year, my learners had a trip to the United States Embassy in Cameroon, and they had to talk about what they've been doing in their classroom that was special, what made them like the lessons, the English language, how they can evaluate the progress they've been making in English language. And I want to say it was a real time for the learners to talk about their emotions, talk about their activities, talk about integrating other cultures. Because, sometimes we come into a classroom with diverse cultures. So the learners have the opportunity to live together and be able to accept and accommodate others in the classroom. Basically.
And I mean, this sounds wonderful, Elsie. And when we were chatting before the show, you mentioned that you felt that learning about social emotional learning had actually really helped your teaching. That can you tell us how has that improved your teaching? What have the results? What does that look like?
Yes, I know it comes with a bit of experience, but when I started off teaching, I want to be truthful and honest. I didn't really care enough about the learners. My business was to come into the classroom, deliver a lesson, and walk out. And sometimes it didn't really occur to me that the learners had difficulties that I could help them improve. Maybe not directly related to acquiring the English language, but also solving some of the hindrances that it affects them from their homes, from peers, and from the administration. Because you'll find that when you come to school, you don't only relate with your classmates, you have interaction with members of the administration, you have interaction with those in the community. I've had situations where people met me out of the classroom in my living quarters related to the work I do in school. They would come up and say, okay, my son says you are the teacher. Can you help him? He's having problems. He cannot acquire the language. And even at home, he's not submissive. So that's the time for me to keep out the language and then talk, counsel, regulate the emotions. Sometimes these learners are going through their adolescence. They have difficulties moving through these different stages. So I find it important to deal with the emotions, and sometimes just talking. I've had a time when I stopped the lesson in the middle of the class, and I told one of the really recalcitrant students to come with me for a walk. And that was it that day. We went out and talked with him. The others remained in class. They had some activities to do, but we're talking outside. We're moving outside, and I was telling him that this is your future. You have to make do while the sun shines. You have to make hay while the sun shines. So it made me to come out of that cluster. I can call it a cluster. I can call it that fitting that, no, you are just a teacher. You can just give the grammar, give the vocabulary, give whatever you're giving and work out. So it made me establish a real concrete relationship with my learners.
Which is wonderful. And then I think once you kind of have that, then the rapport in the classroom obviously grows, and learning as a result, tends to happen slightly more easily, potentially. Elsie, if anyone is watching thinking, okay, I find this interesting, could you recommend either any resources that they could turn to or activities that they could start with? Are there any tips you could give us?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, we have this CASEL model. It's CASEL framework, CASEL. You can Google that out, and you can find information about the major characteristics or the major points that go with social emotional learning. The CASEL framework, it's a major background because it deals with the learners, or maybe adults, the community, administrators, and everyone surrounding the learning process, that maybe they will serve as stakeholders. So the major starting point is maybe the CASEL framework, and then you can apply that in your context and see how that can help you improve and make your practice different. It's very straightforward. It's not a complicated idea. There are 5 major principles that anybody who is well-intentioned can follow them and try to help their learners if they themselves are intentional about their activities and about their practices. And then we can improvise. It's a spontaneous thing you do when you come into class as a teacher. For example, the warmers. I said we have cards. I call them well-being cards that any teacher, you can make them. You can just make 5 of your own. You cut the cardboards into shapes, whatever. Some people like hearts and rectangles and squares, and then write just simple questions on how learners are feeling today. How you feeling? Just one word. And then they will have to write on the back of the cards, or love, happy, sad, gloomy, or whatever they think. And then you collect their responses after that, and then try to work on that. And discuss, maybe for about 5 minutes before the class, you discuss how we can overcome the circumstances. If it's something to improve, all right, we then tell the learners, okay, this is a special case. We'll come back to that. And for those who are enthusiastic, for those who want to move on, we can move. But we call the learners. It's some kind of an inclusive practice. You bring the learners, you consider everyone. There are people who will come and tell you, no class. You give your cards and the person say, no class today. So you have to find a way around to make them interested, make them collaborate, and then move on. And then we can also have rounding off exercises, like I said. We can have a poster, we can have a project. And when we are dealing, most of the times when I'm dealing with the environment, because in my context, I have a theme related to the environment, which is just too broad. So I can split it up. We can talk about maybe climate change, or maybe pollution, or well-being, because this part of well-being is not really a focus in our teaching, in the classroom. The major aspects on which maybe the curriculum they want to highlight is pollution, maybe climate change. But there's a text on well-being and health related to the environment. Because if you, as an individual, you are not feeling fine within, you can't relate positively with the environment. And the environment also plays a part to your well-being. So I brought that in as an additional booster to the learning of the climate or the environment. So how do we live well? Just basic things: good food, sleep well, exercise, prioritize. And I even made a game I copied from someone online. I had a song, I said, Monday motivation. Every Monday morning. Unfortunately for me, that class wasn't in the morning. It was late in the afternoon when it was really sunny. So that song kind of invigorates, empowers the learners. When I come and say Monday motivation, everybody's happy. We sing, we tell ourselves our goals, we tell ourselves it's a 10-point a song, a little rhyme on Facebook if anyone wants that. So there are little activities to bring in the energy, to make the learners aware that they are not just there for maybe academic purposes. Their emotions, their well-being is also part of the learning process. So there are a myriad of activities that anybody can do, from card games, project-based learning. The learners can go out, study something.
This is really good because those activities are they're not overly demanding in terms of producing them.
Not at all.
Also, so like with the cards, you can also do them more than once. So these are really great activities. Thank you so much. So many interesting points, and I think you made such a good point about if you're not okay yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So I think that's one thing to remember. Elsie, thank you for sharing with us. Oh, my camera's moving. And best of luck. And we hope to see you soon.
Nikki. Thank you. And hope to meet you on another platform soon. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks, Elsie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And back with a very special guest as well. After Elsie was telling us about social and emotional learning and how we can apply these practical strategies in our classes, especially I like the Monday morning, the singing bit. I'm not sure if my staff will appreciate it, but definitely Elsie, thank you very much for the ideas. Now, I would like to welcome to our stage Billy Jago. Hello, Billy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Billy, I know your work, but first, I would like the people watching us from home to know your work in case they don't really know you. So how did your ELT journey begin?
Great question. So I started as a teacher around, I can't even remember how many years ago, but I was a teacher for around 16 years. And I first started, my first teaching post was in Italy, teaching young learners. And then I moved to China and worked 6 months in a state school. So I had sort of 70 to 80 students in one class. And then I moved to a private school. So I had smaller classes from there. And it sort of went from there. I started teaching in Turkey, and then I moved to Spain, where I set up my own sort of language school within my house. And then I came back to the UK. I taught at a private language school in Cambridge. So lots of experience teaching lots of different types of learners and types of like exam preparation and different types of Englishes for different purposes as well. And then when I was teaching at a language school in Cambridge, I had the opportunity to write a sample for a publisher for one of their course books. So I wrote a sample and I was lucky enough to get the job. And it sort of spiraled from there. I was juggling materials writing and teaching. And then ever since then, I've been a materials writer and a teacher trainer for around 6 years now. So I have a teacher training platform called ELT CPD. So we offer teacher training courses and a YouTube channel as well. We used to have a podcast and we interviewed lots of amazing experts, some IATEFL patrons and executives as well. And I also have a digital educational consultancy called Otter Education. And we help sort of educational publishers and course providers leverage AI in their products, and also provide assistance with things like digital accessibility and inclusion in materials as well. So yeah, it's an important topic that we're talking about today, because I definitely suffered burnout as a teacher, and that sort of led me to developing my career within ELT, just to avoid that stress and that burnout that I did suffer from.
Absolutely. Billy, first of all, you're wearing so many hats.
So many hats, but everybody in ELT does, I feel.
That's very, very true. But what was the moment in your own teaching and teacher training career when you realized that stress, for example, was taking a toll on you or your colleagues?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, I'd been teaching for about 9 years at this point, and this was very much of course there was internet and there was sharing docs and things like that, but a lot of the materials I'd made were on paper at the time. So, as a teacher, you create so many lesson plans, so many materials, and I just didn't have them organized. So I was creating lessons, creating materials, trying to personalize them. And I was teaching sort of 8:30 in the morning till 6:30 in the evening, commuting an hour either side. And I just knew that I wasn't giving everything that I could have to my students that I was teaching, because I was teaching so many students, so many different types of classes, and obviously marking homework, providing supplementary tasks for challenge and remediation of language. And I got to the point where there was just so much to do. As a teacher, you're sort of a caregiver, you're a listener, you're a mediator, role model, a counsellor of sorts. I'm sure every teacher and everyone who works in education feels the same way. And the list goes on. So I think there gets to a point that if you're not prioritizing yourself in a way, it can get pretty overwhelming. But burnout does creep up on you sometimes when you're not expecting it to. You think, I'll be fine, I'll just carry on like this, and then it hits you. So
Exactly. That's so very true. And I've read somewhere online that if you do not take a day off, then your body will decide when you will take the day off.
Absolutely. And Nikki just mentioned it as well. If you're not okay, then you can't really take care of anyone else either. So if you're not prioritizing yourself, then how can you be expected to deliver the best lessons that you can for your students as well?
That's true. So, Billy, in your experience, what are the most common causes of stress for educators today?
Yeah, I think, as I touched on, obviously wearing many different hats. And I think getting into teaching in the first place, I think most people who work in education do it because they love it and because they're passionate about it. And obviously they want their learners to learn as much as they can, from you. But we're only one person, right? And so we can only give so much and do so much. For example, if we're teaching something and perhaps our students aren't picking it up as we'd like or as we'd hoped, even though we'd worked really hard to sort of drill that and practice it, it can feel quite challenging, because you think, what have I done wrong? You're reflecting on your own teaching practices, whereas actually, I'm sure we'll get on to this in a minute, but sometimes it's not necessarily about your teaching practices. It's just about thinking a little bit outside of what you're delivering and what you're doing, and delivering it in a different way as well. So first of all, I think trying to juggle everything. Secondly, I think as teachers, we take on a lot more than we can handle. Obviously, there's technologies and things now that can help us with things like lesson planning and things, but I think we always want a hold over that, right? We'll use it maybe, but we want to be able to personalize it for our students because we know our students. But if you're teaching multiple classes of multiple different learners for an extended time, there's only so much you can do that, because there's only one of you at the end of the day.
That's so true. Now, what do you think is one element of stress for educators that people underestimate?
I think the fact that it creeps up on you when you least expect it. I never thought, I was in my 20s at this point, early 30s, late 20s. I didn't expect to get burnt out. I was at the beginning of my teaching career. So I think it creeps up on you when you just don't expect it. And that's something to really look out for, because it sort of doesn't maybe portray it in the way that you expect. You think you'll be, you know, a typical image of sort of pulling your hair out and steam coming out of your ears, whereas actually it's not that. It's just, like you said, feeling like sort of a bit down on it. Well, like, what am I doing wrong? Why is it not translating to my students? Why are lessons not going the way that I want them to? Or why did my lesson plan not work, for example, or a particular activity? So it might show in minor things rather than a whole sort of episode, really.
I really like the fact that you mentioned burnout at the very early stages of someone's career.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of young people entering our profession and they're so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What are some of the things or the little steps that they can take so that they can take things one step at a time, for example, and slowly cope with this burnout?
Great question. I think there's so many different things as teachers that we think we need to be including in our lessons. So let's think about things like future skills. Let's think about social emotional learning. Let's think about using AI in the classroom and different technologies. Let's think about, there's so many different things as teachers. We're like, it's not just language teaching. We're building skills. We're building citizens of the future, essentially. And so it's trying to think about it, not as adding lots of different things, but what does that look like as a whole practice? Because if not, it's overwhelming. And obviously you're wearing these different hats already. So trying to include everything you learn about in CPD sessions all at one time, again, just adds to that overwhelm as well. So I think, first of all, identifying what you're able to do. First of all, you're not able to do everything. So for me, technology was very important in my classroom. I had those capabilities in the room, and students sort of expected it at the time. So I utilized that, and I found that that was really useful for me personally. Whereas some people hate technology, they have to rely on it and it crashes and it's just a disaster. So only do things that you feel comfortable with. Obviously play around in your own time with what you understand and what you have a passion for, and see how you can incorporate that in your practices and methodologies as well.
I'm so happy you're mentioning this, Billy, because we're talking about setting boundaries right now. And as a new teacher or teacher of any age, it's so hard to set boundaries, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes it's hard to identify what's causing you the stress as well. You might, you know, there's always that fear of, especially with newer teachers, thinking, oh, this is just not for me. Whereas actually it might be for you. There might be a long career ahead, but it's just taking it step by step and really identifying, yeah, what are those boundaries for me? What can I physically take on and manage? And what sort of triggers stress if I'm feeling any as well.
That's very good. And, you know, I think that people have got trouble setting boundaries because they feel the guilt of setting those boundaries. So how can teachers overcome this feeling of guilt?
Yeah, great point. I think there's different things that you can do to sort of learn to say no in a little way. So, for example, simple things like having your students at the end of a productive task, perhaps check each other's work. Maybe simplifying even further by having sort of a marking criteria. Say, I don't know, highlight if there's a spelling error, or circle if there's a grammatical tense error, for example. So give your students a key. You can build that together. Give that to students, have them mark each other's work and make corrections according to the key, and then hand it back to each other, and they can sort of edit their own work, and just encouraging a bit more sort of like self-reflection and student sort of autonomy, because that can save you lots of time outside the classroom, especially when it comes to marking, which of course takes a lot of time as well. So just incorporating small things into lessons when you feel like your workload is becoming overwhelming. And as Elsie said as well, sort of project-based learning, making the student sort of the teacher, if they feel comfortable in teaching, I don't know, let's say prepositions of place, they feel very comfortable in that, but another group is struggling, have them do a presentation on it, have them do a quiz on it, you know, have them lead a little bit as well, because that benefits them and that develops their future skills too.
I love this so much. And I'm really happy you're answering this question before I even ask it, because I was going to ask you, what classroom activities can students do so that they can release some stress from their teachers?
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think as teachers, we don't really want to let on that we're stressed because, you know, we seem to be superhuman to our students. But I'm going to sort of say outside of the classroom itself, aside from doing those things with students, I think as a teacher, it's important to have a network, whether that's in your school or outside of your school. So for me, I went to a conference and I saw a writer who I admired, and I went up to her and I asked her, you know, sort of, this is what I'm dealing with in my teaching at the moment. I want to sort of advance in my career. What network should I join? Who could I speak to who might be feeling the same? And they pointed me towards the special interest groups for IATEFL. They pointed me towards sort of different groups on LinkedIn, different conferences, different meetups, and just having that network of people really makes you realize you're not alone if you are feeling stressed or overwhelmed. And there are other people as well who can, you know, you can share activities with them, what worked for them, how did they get through their burnout as well.
Amazing. And my kind of last question, but it's not really the last question. I always lie to our guests because these are so interesting ideas. So what can school leaders do in order to be more supportive and offer a more welcoming environment for their teachers?
Such a great question. I think the schools that I've worked at didn't really have those boundaries in place. We were sort of machines of sorts. We were expected to churn out a lot of lessons. But I think something that's really, really useful is to have a sharing session within the school. So if you have a lesson plan as a teacher that's really worked for you, and say you're teaching a B2 level of student, you know, another teacher's teaching B2, swap lesson plans. If it worked, share it with each other. You know, ELT is such a sharing community as it is. So we shouldn't be afraid to sort of share things that have worked for us, you know, champion ourselves. This was great because students reacted in this way. There was spontaneous language produced. So sharing with each other, and also maybe having teacher-led sort of CPD sessions or just open dialogue sessions where teachers feel able to talk about their experiences in the classroom, what they're struggling with, especially for newer teachers. You know, I remember teaching mixed conditionals was something I just used to avoid all the time because I thought, my students are going to ask me questions that I just don't know. So just having the opportunity to speak to other teachers about your fears and your worries, especially when they're more experienced, and they can sort of help you along that journey as well.
This is brilliant. I must say, I have got my little notepad here, and while you were talking, I was taking notes while looking at you. It was incredible. So now, Billy, if you could give one message to every stressed out teacher watching right now, what would it be?
Celebrate the wins. Celebrate the small wins, recognize your efforts, recognize that you are doing a fantastic job, whether your students retain that present perfect or not in the next lesson. You know, think about what you've achieved. You've planned a whole lesson. You've successfully, you know, made a cohesive flow throughout your lesson. You know, you've engaged with your learners. You've put yourself in a vulnerable situation to teach your learners and answer spontaneous questions that you might not know the answer to. And just understand that you're doing an amazing job. You're wearing so many hats on so many days and in so many different classes. So yeah, just celebrate yourself every now and again, because we focus a lot on our learners. Of course, that's what we do. But also focusing on yourself every now and again is not a selfish thing to do.
I love this. Billy, thank you so very much for coming to see us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everybody for attending as well.
Amazing. Billy, we will definitely see each other again, either online or in Cambridge.
Yes, hopefully so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you so much. Whew. All right, everybody. So it's time to take a breath. Drink a little bit of water. Let me invite Nikki back in. Hello. Nikki.
Hello. That was great, wasn't it? So many useful ideas, and such a good point that we often don't realise we're burnt out, you know, especially if we're quite new to the profession.
Exactly. That's so true. And thank you also very much, and Elsie and Billy, for coming to share their ideas. And it's truly human to say to one another here in our community that I am experiencing burnout. I would like to learn how to cope with it. Can you share some ideas? Can you share some resources? It is very, very important.
100%. And I saw a wonderful plenary by Sarah Mercer, who is obviously very interested in teacher wellbeing. And she said that self-compassion, which is basically what Billy was saying as well, the idea that you would never tell your best friend you've done a rubbish job. You would always say to your best friend, slow down, hang on a second, look at what you've achieved, look at what you've done. So we need to do the same for ourselves. We're very harsh on ourselves. We're always criticizing ourselves, and there is absolutely no need. We don't need to do that. So yeah, as Billy said, celebrate the wins and think about the achievements that we've made, even though it might not seem like it. But yeah, bit of self-compassion.
Absolutely. So, Nikki, thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia.
We will see each other again soon.
Definitely.
Excellent. So I'm going to remove you from the stage so that I can say goodbye to everybody watching us from home. So thank you very much for joining us. I hope that you found this beautiful episode very, very useful. You got lots of practical ideas to use in class. If you are not watching us live and you're watching the recording, feel free to take a breather, have something to drink, and then we will see you in the next live show. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the Mental Health Awareness Week. See you soon.